Thank you, Minister. And I think you and I have had these conversations across the floor of the House regularly in the past couple of weeks. So thank you for your attendance here and your answers to questions. I have a number of questions. I'll fly through them, Minister, and give you some time to reply. The first is around external candidates, and we did put down a question to you. And I know of an external candidate who's working, registered in her own school to do higher level Irish in order to access primary school teaching. Now, she's been on to the Examinations Commission, to your own office, to everybody, and what she said was people are very nice, but nobody can give her an answer. And when I say dozens of phone calls and emails, I'm not exaggerating. Now, she still doesn't know what's going to happen. Now, your office did come back with a response, and you said that those, what they call out-of-school learners, you would be contacting them, but I want to know when, because this young woman has been studying for the past year, and she needs to know now what's going to happen. And the question I'm asking also is when, and secondly, if somebody has been attending grinds with a registered teacher, I'm not asking you specifically about this girl, but just in general, could that be seen as credible, satisfactory evidence for predictive grades? My second question is two-pronged. It's been brought up by a number of TDs, small rural schools, about to lose a teacher, and I've asked you before already if you would consider for this year being flexible on that, because if schools go from 3 to 2 or 2 to 1, it means there's huge responsibility on those left to manage COVID, but also it helps with social distancing, and indeed Deputy McGrath's suggestion about using local community centres or whatever, and I've made that suggestion to you before. The issue of school transport has been raised, and you responded to Deputy Noonan, and you said that you now had flexibility, the nearest or the second nearest school. But what I want to ask you, Minister, is specifically, have any decisions been taken to cease existing bus school routes where that issue about those attending the nearest or second nearest school does not apply? And finally, a very short question around the use of devices. Your department has provided schools with resources to help those students who don't have access to devices, in some cases, purchase them or at least have access. But there is an issue, Minister, around teachers not having access but using their own devices, and the issue around GDPR. So what I want to ask is, have you any advice for teachers on this issue, and are there any requirements for teachers on using their own devices? Thank you.
Minister, you have 2 minutes on Deputy Harkin's question, and then I'll give you a few minutes to conclude with
Okay, thanks, Chairman. Just on Deputy, on the question of external candidates, and I know it's been raised before by a number of TDs. The external candidates will be asked to opt in, and I think that will be in about 2 weeks' time. And my advice to the external candidates is, as part of that submission of opting in, they will have to register an account of how they were being taught, who was teaching them, as much detail as possible as part of that opting in, and that will be the decision then, Deputy, as to where that student progresses in terms of getting a calculated grade. The second part of that first question, you asked about a ground school with a registered teacher. Absolutely, if it's a registered teacher providing that tuition and.
Actually, it's private.
Yeah, but if it's a registered teacher or a retired teacher, for example, who maybe the registration has lapsed, yeah, so that registered teacher will be in a position, but it also, the person will also have to provide data as to when the tuition was provided and over a period of time. So hopefully that is of some help.
Make some concluding comments. Yeah.
And just in relation to the retention of teachers, look, I know many deputies have raised this issue. Like, this was the year for schools to hold on to the teachers, but what happens once that teacher knows that the numbers is not going to be there for this particular year, to move on to a lot of them actually have been reappointed at this stage as well. But one thing is for sure, where we have sub-teachers, where we have teachers looking for work on a substitute basis or on the supplementary panel, or any availability of students or of teachers, there will be a demand coming in September. So that is something I want to make clear as well, because I know at a personal level I've been contacted by a few teachers that will have concerns and will be getting advice because of their immunocompromised health needs, that they may not be able to go into the classroom themselves. So we need to have substitute teachers ready for that. You also mentioned about existing bus routes being extinguished. It all depends on the level of demand. If the students are there, if they were there last year, there's been no change in policy. The only change in policy is the one that I introduced last year, was to include the second closest school for post-primary. And I know there's still an issue with primary, but as part of the review, maybe there might be a bit of a common sense in terms of where we're going with school transport.